All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're unpacking a story from the sources that is honestly just incredible. It's a narrative that's captivated scholars and everyday people for literal centuries. We're talking about the miraculous mystery of the Ashab al-Kahf, better known as the Sleepers of the Cave. Throughout this explainer, we're going on a serious journey. We're talking ancient history, unshakable faith, the actual bending of time, and a really fascinating account of divine protection. It's one of those stories that genuinely asks us to just suspend our normal, everyday understanding of reality and step into a profound historical mystery.
So you might be wondering, why are we talking about this? Well, to really get it, you got to understand how this story even hit the historical record. The source material tells us that the leaders of the Quraysh over in Mecca were feeling super threatened by Prophet Muhammad's message. I mean, their entire social and financial system was on the line here. So two prominent guys, Nadir bin Harith and Uqba bin Abi Muayt, decided they needed a foolproof way to test his claim to prophethood. They actually traveled all the way to Medina, met up with Jewish scholars who knew the ancient scriptures inside and out, and came back with three incredibly obscure historical questions. And the ultimate trap, the most pivotal of these impossible questions, was simply this: who were the youths who disappeared in ancient times? Section 1. The Meccan Test. This brilliantly illustrates the intense political stakes in Mecca at the time.
Now, this wasn't just some random trivia question. It was a highly calculated trap. These events were barely known in the Hijaz region. The Quraysh figured there was absolutely zero chance Prophet Muhammad could know the answer, unless he actually had divine revelation. You can imagine the tension while he waited for guidance. And then, according to the narrative, that guidance drops in the form of Surah al-Kahf, completely nailing their impossible test. To really grasp the answer, we have to rewind the clock. We're going back past the era of Prophet Isa, or Jesus. After his time, believers in one God faced crushing persecution. The Roman Empire was brutal, destroying Jerusalem, slaughtering hundreds of thousands. This relentless oppression went on for centuries, leading us straight into the year 250 AD, in the city of Ephesus, right under the thumb of a tyrant named Dakianus.
Section 2. Reign of the Tyrant.
Dakianus he was totally intoxicated by his own power. The accounts describe his rule as absolute terror for anyone stepping out of line with the state religion. He threw this massive, terrifying annual festival outside the city, and skipping it? Yeah, not an option. Everyone was forced to bow to stone idols and join in these really bloody, gruesome rituals. Hesitate for even a second, and it was immediate death. But here's where it gets really interesting. Inside this chaotic, terrifying festival, our sources highlight 7 specific young men. What's wild is that they were complete strangers to each other, though they all happened to come from very wealthy, noble families. Individually, they were just disgusted by the mindless bloodshed around them. So one by one, looking for an escape, they wandered off and, coincidentally, all ended up sitting under the shade of the exact same tree. At first, nobody said a word. They were terrified. But finally, one guy broke the silence, and they realized they were all hiding the exact same secret: Tawheed, unwavering faith in one true God. But in a city absolutely crawling with spies, a secret like that, it's not going to stay hidden. They set up a secret spot to worship, but they got busted and were dragged right in front of Dakianus himself. Imagine the suspense. But instead of backing down, these guys fearlessly looked the most dangerous man in the empire right in the eye. They gave this incredibly powerful declaration: "Our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. We will not call upon any deity besides him." They completely rejected his entire system. Now, because they were from such prominent families, Dakianus didn't kill them right then and there. Instead, he gave them a terrifying ultimatum: drop the faith in a few days, or you're dead. Section 3. Escape to the Cave. So they're faced with a desperately high-stakes decision. They knew Dakianus wasn't bluffing. Staying meant execution. But leaving meant giving up their massive wealth, their noble status, their families, literally the only lives they'd ever known. Choosing faith over everything, they made the call. They fled the city in absolute secret, trekking through rugged mountains until they found an isolated, desolate cave. Exhausted, knowing soldiers would be hunting them, they didn't panic. The source text tells us they made a profound prayer for divine mercy and guidance. They completely surrendered. They literally left it all up to God, and they fell asleep. Section 4. The 300-year sleep. This is where everything shifts. We move from a tense historical escape right into a divine miracle. What happens next totally defies physics. God intervened, putting these guys into an unnaturally deep slumber. And I don't mean a long nap. This was a complete suspension of biology and time. The text breaks down the mechanics inside that cave, and it's mind-blowing. The sun's rays were mysteriously diverted, rising on the right, setting on the left, so they stayed perfectly in the shade. Their bodies were automatically turned from side to side so they wouldn't decay. At the entrance, you had their dog Kitmir posted up with his paws out like a guard, and on top of all that, there was this overwhelming psychological aura of dread around the cave. Literally, if anyone had accidentally stumbled by, they'd be hit with such pure terror, they'd just turn around and run.
Now, going back to the start of this explainer, we mentioned Ashab al-Kahf and the Raqim. Here's where that piece of the puzzle fits in. When King Dakianios realized they were hiding in that cave, he was furious. He ordered the entrance to be bricked up permanently. He was going to bury them alive. But the official forced to do this cruel job was secretly righteous. He wanted to make sure history remembered them. So he engraved their names and their story onto a copper plaque, the Raqim. He sealed it in an iron box and hid it right inside the foundation of the wall they built over the cave.
And then, time just passes. Not a year, not a decade. 300 years. Seriously, let that sink in. 300 years. That's like falling asleep right before the American Revolution and waking up today. Outside that cave, the world completely flipped. Dakianus died, entire generations lived and died. The Roman Empire actually stopped worshiping idols and embraced Christianity. The world those young men ran away from literally ceased to exist.
Section 5. Waking in a New World. So fast forward 3 centuries, there's a new guy in charge, King Bedros, and he's a righteous, justice-loving ruler. But he's dealing with a massive crisis. His people believe in God, but they're seriously doubting life after death. They don't believe in resurrection anymore. Bedros is heartbroken, practically begging God for a sign to prove it to them. And at the exact moment he's praying, the guys in the cave wake up. The dramatic irony here is just, wow. They wake up, rub their eyes, their stomachs are growling, and they're like, hey, how long were we out? And they honestly conclude, perhaps a day or part of a day. They have zero clue. In their minds, they just outran Dakianus yesterday, and his goons are probably right outside the cave looking for them.
So they're starving, right? They elect Yamlicha to go sneak into town to buy some uncontaminated food. He's creeping around totally terrified, trying not to be seen. He finds a baker, buys some bread, and hands the guy a silver coin. But the baker doesn't give him bread. He just stares at the coin. His eyes get huge. He thinks Yamlicha just dug up some ancient buried treasure. Before Yamlicha can even process what's happening, the shopkeeper calls the city guards and Yamlicha is immediately arrested. And this right here leads to one of the wildest reality clashes in the whole narrative. Yamlicha is panicking, trying to explain, look, I just escaped Dakianus yesterday. My friends are hiding in the cave. And the guards are just looking at him like he's crazy, going, Dakianus? Are you kidding? That tyrant died over 300 years ago? Can you even imagine the shock? The total paradigm shift for Yamlicha in that exact second. The realization that his world is completely gone, and he's basically stepped into a science fiction time jump.
Section 6, Mystery Solved and Lessons.
So instead of throwing him in a dungeon, the guards march Yamlicha straight to King Bedros. Yamlicha tells this completely unbelievable story, but King Bedros is smart. He doesn't just blindly believe it. He goes to the royal archives, and guess what he finds? He pulls out the Raqim, that copper plaque hidden centuries ago. He reads the names, and they match Yamlicha's story flawlessly. The mystery is solved. So the king, the soldiers, half the city basically, they all rush up to the cave for this incredibly emotional reunion. For King Bedros, this was the exact sign he prayed for. It was the ultimate, irrefutable proof of resurrection. Because think about it. If the Creator can perfectly pause and preserve human life for 300 years, then resurrecting the dead at the end of time? Yeah, definitely within his power. Now, the text tells us that after they served this divine purpose, the youths actually returned to their rest in the cave and peacefully passed away. But their story obviously wasn't over. The believers of that time knew they had just witnessed a massive miracle. They weren't just going to put up a simple tombstone. As mentioned in Surah al-Kahf, ayah 21, they actually built a mosque, a place of worship, right there at the site of the cave. They wanted to make absolutely sure it stayed a center for worshiping the one God, serving as a beacon for everyone who came after them. Now, a quick aside, if you look at the historical debates, people are always arguing over the exact number of youths. Was it 3, 5, 7? The famous scholar Ibn Abbas was pretty confident it was 7, naming guys like Maximina and Yamlicha. But the source material is really clever here. It actually calls out this debate, basically saying, guys, you're missing the point. The exact head count doesn't matter. What matters is the unbelievable gravity of their faith.
And before we wrap up this explainer, we absolutely have to talk about one of my favorite takeaways from the text. Kitmir, the dog. Scholars draw such a cool lesson from him. Kitmir didn't do anything superhuman. He was just loyal. He just stayed close to good, righteous people. But purely because of the company he kept, he gets an eternal honored mention in the Quran. It's just a fantastic reminder about how powerful it is to surround yourself with the right kind of people.
Which brings us to the real so what of this whole explainer. This isn't just some dusty historical footnote. It is a living, breathing framework for trust. It leaves us with a really provocative question to think about. If God can literally suspend the laws of nature, bending time itself, just to protect a handful of sincere kids and their dog from an entire empire, what impossible paths can he open up for you today? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating historical narrative with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.